The Ministry of Justice has confirmed that a significant amount of private data, including criminal records, has been hacked from the legal aid agency. The ministry says it became aware of a cyber attack in April involving data dating back to 2010. However, it says it later realised the incident was more extensive than understood. The group which carried out the attack says 2.1 million items of data were accessed, but that figure has yet to be verified. The legal aid agency's chief executive apologised, saying, "I understand this news will be shocking and upsetting for people, and I am extremely sorry this has happened." Well, Will Guyatt is a technology journalist and has been following the story closely. Will, thank you very much for joining us. I've got to mention that this comes off the back of several quite high-profile cyber incidents that we've seen in the UK over the last couple of weeks. But it's probably the nature of the data which might be involved here that makes this seem somewhat more serious.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like another day, another data breach, but this would be the most significant of all the hacks over the last couple of weeks, namely because they've got a lot of personal information from people, debt records, criminal records, bank details, a lot more information than you would typically be giving to an online retailer. And that's the concern here, is that there's very many pieces of identifiable information. With many of the other hacks, you're in a situation where the hackers are playing the long game, and they'll be putting pieces of information they've got together from, let's say, the Marks and Spencer's breach with some other information found out about you online. Whereas here, it would appear, if we believe everything we've been told, these are fairly complete data sets, and that's a risk for those who have been handling their information with that particular organisation.
And just looking at the background to this, you mentioned Marks and Spencer's and the Co-op as well as this. Is there any reason why we've seen such a number of these incidents in the last few weeks? Is there any sort of connection to this?
They've been happening all the time. I don't think there's been any massive increase in incidents. What is actually happening is that organisations are getting much better about telling users that they've been impacted, and some of that comes from the good work of the Information Commissioner in the UK. The reality is these cyber attacks are now a fact of life. They're going to happen on a daily basis. It's just how long we as a society stay concerned or interested, because if we keep hearing about incident after incident after incident, eventually we're all going to lose interest. But the reality is our data is worth something to criminals. Criminals want to get hold of our information. They want to stop organisations who use our data from operating correctly. And that's why they think many people will pay ransomware fines. Obviously, UK government has a very strict strategy, as do the National Cyber Security Centre in the UK, suggesting that people don't pay it. But evidence in other countries shows that organisations have paid these fines to try and get through these ransomware attacks.
And particularly when you're talking about what could be data that's very valuable, obviously valuable to the customers, but very valuable to the company as well. Getting this data back or not could be the difference between your business surviving or not surviving. That decision whether to pay the hackers must be quite a difficult one.
Yeah, it has to be a tough challenge. Just this evening, I've heard some news that a council in my neck of the woods in Gloucestershire that had a cyber attack about 4 or 5 years ago. They say they spent over £1 million resurrecting their systems. They didn't pay the fine. They just had to hire a great deal of IT help in to kind of rebuild their systems and servers. So there's a lot at stake here for companies. And the numbers we were hearing from Marks and Spencer's were millions and millions of pounds a day when their systems weren't working. So there's a lot of impetus on companies to try and solve these things quickly. And criminals will go to where money is found. This is the modern day equivalent, David, if you like, of going in and holding up a bank. But you don't have to go through the front door with a sawn-off shotgun anymore. You can do it online.
We've heard from Richard Atkinson, who's the president of the Law Society of England and Wales, saying the incident once again demonstrates the need for sustained investment to bring the LAA's antiquated IT system up to date and ensure that the public have continued trust in the justice system. Is that a key point here? Are we dealing in Britain with too many systems which haven't been upgraded for a long time and just aren't up to scratch in the modern security environment?
IT security is the least sexy and least visible investment until something goes wrong. That's the challenge. Companies that spend millions and millions of pounds on tech and security to keep themselves safe seldom get praised for it. People raise an eyebrow and suggest they've spent too much, but only when organisations stay safe and protected is when that kind of investment is worth the money. The reality is government departments do not have enough money to go round, and they cannot afford to keep updating these computer systems, but they're going to have to in the future. If information is being stored digitally, organizations are going to have to do better to protect it, because there's absolutely, every time I do something like this, somebody will ask me for a stack of advice about how you stay safe online. The reality is, I'm sure many of these users were keeping their data safe online. It's been lost by a third party, being that a government department.
And that then brings us on to a really interesting point, because a lot of people will be watching us talking about this now and worried about their data, not just for potentially the legal aid agency or M&S or the co-op, but for whatever that next hack might be, which the next company or organisation that gets breached is. And given that in everyday life we can't really avoid giving our data to these people if we want to live our lives online, is there anything we can do to guard against what the next incident like this might be?
It depends how risk averse you are or how concerned you are about this happening. My advice to anybody is try not to use the same password on more than one website. And I know when we all go and use hundreds of different websites, it's easier said than done, but that's definitely something you should be looking at. For other people who are concerned about maybe their bank information or something getting shared, maybe get one of these new challenger bank accounts and transfer money to it from one particular bank account, and don't use any of those on the internet. Keep your information to a minimum if it's something that really concerns you. I have a slightly different view in that it is a fact of life now that this sort of stuff is going to happen. I keep credit monitoring on my file to make sure no unusual accounts are being set up, and there's various other services that banks and others offer now to routinely trawl the dark web to see if any of your personal data is being shared, and that's how people can keep an eye on this kind of stuff.
And presumably, if you've had dealings with one of these organisations, you're going to have to be extra vigilant over the next couple of weeks of any emails, text messages, phone calls you might get, because there could be something malicious there.
Yeah, this legal aid case, I would urge anybody who's been impacted by this and know that their personal data has been impacted, keep a very close eye on people trying to take out credit in your name, unusual accounts, text messages coming to you, people calling you and asking you for other bits of personal data. The reality is this is a much bigger, deeper and richer data set than we've had from any of the other leaks recently, any of the other data breaches. So this one seems particularly hot in terms of risk. So yeah, if you've been impacted by this one, I'd keep a very close eye over the next couple of months.
And just finally, we keep hearing from government about how the way forward for Britain is as a hotbed for new tech, in particular areas like AI. Is it getting the basics like security right that's going to hold us back from being able to develop this and market this internationally?
Yeah, and that's the challenge. Like I said, investment in IT security is the least sexy thing. The government would much rather talk about spending millions of pounds on AI in the drive for ruthless efficiency. Perhaps based on this attack and others we've heard of over time, government, local government, all of these organisations should have money spent on proper cybersecurity and training for its people to ensure that they're more likely to be protected. These sorts of attacks are not going away. We're going to have more and more and more of them as our data becomes more valuable to these organisations.
Will Guyatt, thank you very much for joining us.